Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, Paranormal Portal Podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together. Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Am I on mute? I'm 5'5". Good to see y'all. Good to see you. Let me know. Hello, Scott. Hello, Lindsay. Good to see you, sweetie. Thank you, Kat, for sending all that wonderful stuff. We've got a little feature from Kat tonight. Good to see you, Ghost Lore. Hello, Uncommon Belief, all you wonderful gatekeepers. Froze, are you watching this with me? Is this just not a fantastic documentary? I mean, we are on episode 5. Of course, we are talking about Liberty, the 1997 documentary put out by PBS. I'll tell you, folks, PBS used to put some good stuff in. I remember putting a little sage out there because, man, I'll tell you what, the negative isn't flying through the air. You know, we're dodging. We're all doing the Matrix, you know, like all week. I'm sure all my light worker friends out there. Get her going. Oh, it's better. Thank you. Here, get you some. Get you some of that. Here you go. That's why I put that little Zen video, because it's just been it's been a couple weeks, hasn't it? You know, this past week it's been like one hell of a year. All right. So good to see you. Hey, Steve, is that you? Missing persons. Good to see you, sweetheart. So here's the deal. If I missed you, I'll try to catch you tonight. Scott, it's great to see you. So anyway, let me get back to Froze. Sir Bowden, good to see you. And you need a bale sage. Like one of those big old hay bales full. Yeah, you know what? Not enough sage in the world, right? Well, I would say there is, because you just need a little bit of sage and a whole lot of intent and a whole lot of goodwill put behind it. But anyway, I'm getting knocked off the track because here's the thing. I'm trying to adjust my lights. Everything is just so bright. It's right in my eyes. It's killing me. But we're in it to win it tonight. We are on episode 5. Welcome to night 5 of Liberty. And the the titles, they just keep coming. Every week I do this. It seems that the title matches up so well with what's going on in the real world. Tonight's title, and I have nothing to do with that. Of course, the good people who put together this documentary are the people that came up with the titles for each episode. And the title for this episode, episode 5 of Liberty, is The World Turned Upside Down. Boom. You can't make this shit up, folks. So welcome in. Ted, hello, Tedders. How you doing? You can't make it up. So welcome in. I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I am. I'll tell you, I have found inspiration. I have had heard words spoken 248 years ago that are still giving me inspiration today. I put some in one of the videos I did tonight. These people, I'm telling you, if you could find one steady, you be steady. If you could find 1 in 100 now, you know, I hope it's not that bad. I want to really say, you know, 1 in maybe 5,000, but I don't think it's that bad. I mean, what do you think? That could do anything that we've been talking about for the past 5 Sundays, or 4 Sundays, this being the 5th. You know, to get through Valley Forge, to make it through, to not have, for Pete's sake, socks. Martha Washington goes there and she says, what's going on, guys? How y'all doing? What do you need? Where's your socks, son? None of us have socks, ma'am. She said, you will soon have socks, and that was a wonderful thing to say. But, in all reality, what, 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, they would have had socks. I mean, I don't know. Maybe she went back and did a collection in town and brought them right on back. I don't know, but it sure wasn't lickety split. Nothing was back then. Not even how you died. You died of smallpox, a slow, lingering, horrible thing, or on a prison ship. The stuff I've been reading. Be grateful that I'm not one of those hosts that come out here and put all that, because it's hideous. And nowadays, our everyday news, you turn on your car radio and it's hideous, right? I mean, I'm not trying to keep it from you or nothing. It's just hard to get through. If you've ever heard of the Jersey, it's called the Ghost Ship of Brooklyn. I'm saving the whole story for a finale for next week. But the stuff that went on that prison ship, absolutely, you can't even wrap your mind around it, and I've walked through in my mind, hey Mike, through the Villisca Axe murder house or Lizzie Borden axe murders, and we've become so desensitized where you've got people going there paying money to get their picture taken on the couch, a replica of the couch. But how macabre is that? I mean, think about it, where we are. So, to me, I'm not sugarcoating this at all, but to have to go through that, to go through the story and then maybe back through it again to get enough a hold on it to where I could come and try to present it to you guys in some way. It's we're walking through some dark forest here. You know what I mean? So this episode here is not an easy episode. It's grand in its content and its people. And one of the people I'm very glad to have on tonight is somebody we've missed for a couple weeks because she's been out gallivanting, just trampsing the globe, probably out there trying to get information for us to bring to us, to tell us stories. And she's going out there and investigating. Gosh, she's been on Gaia and talked to George Norrie. She's been, she just got back from freshly been bashed. And, I just hope that she's just enjoying this part of her life to where she's put decades in the medical field and been an experiencer and a couple of haunted houses and Lord knows how many different ghosts and ghoulies she's bumped into. So let's get her in here. Like I said, just been bashed, fresh out of Gettysburg. Lynn Monet, you ready, sweetie? Oh my God. All I see are boobs. You're muted, sweetheart.
I said this shirt makes my boobs look good.
Yeah. Look at
there you go.
Some of that.
I just wanted to show you that I have my special outfit on
tonight. I see, darling.
Did great, people. You can buy these on her page. You need to go buy these. Good. This is required apparel for.
Oh my goodness!
For watching the show.
Yes, and the new Sage Against the Machine. You can get that in a hoodie, and you can get the zipper hoodies. You have to click through. There's several different kinds of hoodies. There's light hoodies, and there's all kinds of stuff. But anyway. Boo boobs. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Yep. Boo boobs. There we go. There we go. There you get some of that. That's what you're fighting for, fellas. I mean, it's a revolutionary war to start a revolution. Say you want a revolution. What a great talk. What a great day. So good to see you.
Hey,
we missed you. We missed you. Did you have a great time?
I did. I'm so glad. I got to meet some people. Of course, I was kind of back in the way back.
In the way back,
doing
the peanut gallery.
Yeah, in the peanut gallery. But I did get to meet some people. I got to meet up with Brian Bowden. He's a badass, y'all. He's a tall fella. He's a bad mamma jamma. And he can verify that my boobs are real. No, I'm just kidding.
Where is he? I know he's in here. I saw him.
I saw him too.
Yeah, what?
I mean, yeah, I am.
It's no fakery here. No fakery here. It's a real deal here. This is real paranormal.
Yes, it is. and I can't see the chat again. I'm sorry.
Oh,
So
doggone it. Let me see. I'll pull them up here. Here we go. Here's your laughy faces. This is from Kat. Kat sent us in a feature tonight too. It's going to be a special episode, guys. It's probably going to go a little over. So if you need to go pee, you need to get more popcorn, just be right back. Just go walk the dog. Come on back, because we got to pack a lot into this. And, I want to hear real quick where Lynn's been and what she saw. But then we got to get into this because, gosh, Lynn, episode 5.
I know,
Liberty.
Right? I'm really excited about this one too, because I've done my homework on it and I've got some good stuff to put in. I just wanted to reach out. If Brian Bowden hadn't come and been my hero of the day and saved me and helped me pack my car with stuff, I'd probably still be there packing now.
He's there on the screen for you, honey.
There you go. Hey, Brian. Anyway, if he hadn't helped me, like I said, I would still be there. But on the way home, I was driving home in the dark and I hit a deer in Virginia. So that was not fun.
Oh no.
Yeah, I did. It was a stag. And I mean, this thing was so huge. I thought that it was a horse because its back was facing me. And of course the roads were very dark. And the guy in front of me, about a quarter of a mile up, hit it first. And then I saw him kind of pulling over before I even saw the deer in the road. So I clipped it on its ribcage. The guy had run over it, and the antlers were so huge that it got stuck up underneath the guy's car, and the guy severed it behind the shoulders and dragged the legs and the face down the road until he pulled over. It was terrible. So my car's currently being repaired. Terrible. So yeah, but I had a great time. I did I told Brian hello from you. You can verify that. I also told Jim and Dave
and just so many.
Which Dave was
Dave Haney and Jim at the Keystone State Paranormal, and all the everybody from the Hoover House, and you got Steve and Pam Barry and Bob and Jen, and it's just wonderful. We could just name names.
Yes. I told as many. It's wonderful. I told as many as I could, because where I was, most people didn't find me until either they were going through to the tattoo lady or they had finished shopping and they're like, oh gee, we didn't know you were here. So but that's okay. I got to do some sightseeing and do some fun things, and got to meet up with the cast from the new Para Anormal group, with all of the TV crew and everything like that. And Shane also was there. So yeah, I got to meet up with them, and but it was a fun time. I great food. Oh gosh, my new favorite restaurant is in there. It's something brewery. I don't even.
Was it down in Gettysburg? I know exactly where you mean. Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Me too. Had the outdoor patio and all that.
Yes. And the Mile High meatloaf. I made 4 meals out of it. It was just unbelievable. And the Thai bowl. And I ate there twice. I couldn't help it. It was really, really good.
I hope you got to see some of the downtown haunted stuff, the Farnsworth Inn and things like that. Did you go to see the Jenny Wade house or any of the downtown stuff? No,
because
it's hard to do, guys. You got to synchronize everything. It's like, we're going here now, and you have to, because you'll miss so much stuff, because you just want to talk to people and have a conversation.
I didn't know that there was so much going on in the main areas of the hotels. So, and plus me being there at a table by myself, I couldn't leave. So I had to see things before we would come in the morning and afterwards. But I did get to go to the monuments. I got to go and see a couple of things there. The house that we were staying in was haunted. We actually had a group come out, and there were all kinds of soldier activity, and there were this one little old lady that kept talking and up near the bedrooms. I think she fell down the stairs or something, but I mean, she wasn't talking to us. She was talking to someone else. And then there was a family that was singing hymns at night. You could hear them. And one lady started screaming, and all of a sudden I was there with 2 other couples. We each had all of the bedrooms were upstairs right next to each other. And all of a sudden I hear the husband of one of the ladies there, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay." He says, "Well, were you screaming?" I said, "No." And the funny thing was only the men heard the screaming. None of us 3 women heard the screaming.
Wow, only men. Yeah, well, that's possible. they can manifest to what they want to manifest to. And it's just, and that's the kind of stuff that blows our mind, because why when I'm sitting on a rock in Devil's Den, not this happened to me, this hypothetical question, does the person appear and hand me tobacco from, wartime era, for Pete's sake, things like that. Why did these things happen? Tonight we have a ghost so similar, and I'm so glad you're here for this, Lynn, because I believe it. I believe it. I believe it. I believe it. There's not a thing in me that does not believe this ghost story. And I don't know why it is, because there's so many that come and I'll be watching. Come on, maybe it's a chair that pulls out, and your mind is saying, okay, there could be a string on the drawer that pulls out, and the cabinet door, or whatever it may be. Sometimes your mind goes that way, and sometimes your mind just gets sucked into the story, like the old In Search ofs and stuff used to do, in the old unsolved mystery stories, where they bring you in through the history, and they pull you in, and you're there. You feel like you're there, And so a little thing like seeing something, well, it's not a little thing, but seeing a ghost just come down the stairs could just, it rattles you. I still have a favorite CCTV, or actually it wasn't TV. It was somebody with a camera taking a video on their phone, and they're walking in, they're filming the kitchen in a restaurant, and all of a sudden they hear footsteps coming down the stairs. So they're looking, and they can't see anything. They just hear the footsteps, and then the footsteps come down, and they leave little, like almost wet footprints going into the kitchen. And people look at that, they go, oh, this could be, of course it could be fake. I saw Godzilla eat New York. It was very believable. Of course it could be fake. But the feeling you get when you see it, it's, different. Either I go cold, it's like a cold thing, or I start receiving this energy off of it. I don't know if you feel that way when you look at stuff sometimes, but this story tonight is like that. And I'm excited to I've tried to bring a couple of ghost stories in between with each episode, because there's so many tied to the Revolutionary War and these wonderful historic buildings and the battlefields and the people themselves coming back to haunt. Lynn and I have talked, doing this series, this wonderful summer event. It's been so much fun. We still have so much more to go. We're trying to get done before Halloween, folks, but, we're hanging in there. We still have all the spies and the turn and ripping apart Sons of Liberty. Oh, but it'll be fun, though, because they're all really cute and they're all wearing black leather, and it's just adorable. So anyway, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. And, and the girls are cute, too. But so it's just really funny the way they did it, Here's these like 6 dates. Just make up anything else you want to go around, just right out of, just completely lie, But anyway, it's still fun. It's just fun history. But looking back at this ghost story, and it's at one of the most haunted places. How do you even say that? But it's very haunted, and it's Fort Mifflin. And I'm looking forward to bringing that to you. Lynn and I have got together, and we've talked about, we've picked our people. She has her person, I have mine. I've been doing this solo. So last week, I think I did 2 weeks ago, I did Washington, of course. And who did I do last week, guys? Who was it? I can't even remember. Crispy looks adorable. They look great. They really do. But I can't remember now. But anyway, so we've got our people tonight. So I've got a couple things I want to show you before we start watching the episode. Again, like I said, we've got that. That's an hour. I've got a couple other short little things. They're like 5 minutes a piece, something like that. But each one is going to give you a little bit of a deeper dive into this wonderful time. Lynn, did you have any, before we get started here? I know you've been keeping up with this on your own too, because you weren't here for 3 and 4. Was there anything looking back that you wanted to comment on that you were surprised by, that, that just drew you in, or anything like that on the last episodes that we did?
I was not a good history student in school. That was like my worst subject. So getting to go back and review all of this and to look at it brings back bits and pieces that I learned, plus extra things. And I also like going outside of the box and not just what we're seeing, but kind of doing a little bit of an investigation about like the characters to get a little bit more feedback, like how many kids they had and what where they were born, what kind of families they came from, that sort of thing. And so and also what they did, what they accomplished. So far I think that I'm good because you've been very thorough covering all of it. And I'm excited about tonight because I picked General Nathaniel Greene, who was Major General Nathaniel Greene, and that's the person I'm picked tonight.
Absolutely.
I think you'll like this. So
I do too. I just think it's wonderful. And while you're saying that, I'm going to make sure that I've downloaded that slideshow for that. I've got the other one here, and she just mentioned Nathaniel Greene. I believe I have
he's a nice looking fellow. So
here we go. How about that?
Nice. Yeah, he's a nice looking fellow.
He used to take his nerves out on his bangs, folks. Don't hold it against him. We've all done the whole thing where we grab our bang and just hack at them. Think about it. These guys were out in the field. Every picture I had, he just stuck to it. He didn't have time for bangs. Do you understand me? This man was serious about what he did.
Oh, he was a badass. That's for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I absolutely, and I like him too. I think that's a good pick. And there's a couple of the statues for him. And, I wish I had time to really dig into this. My God, I could do Revolutionary War for 10 years and going deep down just into the statues and, and everything else, and why, head down, head up, foot down, cannonballs, everything else. That all means something. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Is that statue at Gettysburg? Because I swear I saw one that looks kind of like that.
Honey, that statues, they're all over Gettysburg, and I couldn't tell you. Some of these people, I watch the National Trust, and and these people giving the tours in Gettysburg, and it's just fascinating. The depth of their knowledge, and who's took over for who, and what did this guy have in his pockets when he got shot. I mean, it's really getting down to that. You can get the detail and the knowledge. Like I said, statues themselves all had a language. So if the horse's head was up or down, or the foot was up or down, or if it was standing on 2 feet, the person on, died in battle, or it speaks all. And I certainly don't know it, but I just find it fascinating because you can get these guides if you're going to go to a place like this, to any battlefield. Make sure you're taking the time, because people just walk through and walk past all this stuff, and you really miss so much of it. I mean, just what went into the artist's depiction to do these statues, and when people really cared and had class, and did stuff that was meaningful like this, it blows your mind. So there you go. What do you want to say, sweetie?
I was going to say they've already booked for 2025. It's the last weekend in July, kind of like this one this year. So they're already booking for that hotel wise and that sort of thing. So maybe I'll get to be a speaker this year. You never know.
Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah. Hey, maybe I'll get to be with you. We could both do it together. That would be fun. We come up with the whole thing. Come up with the whole thing. Maybe some of these crazy people would want to go, and maybe we could dress them up. And they could play characters. We could act out a thing. It would be great.
Yes, it would be fun. It would be great.
Have fun with it. But I'll try to put stuff up here if they've got questions and stuff. Of course, everybody's slinging bacon at you and saying hey and welcoming you in and everything. Scott's here, Ted's here.
I love you guys.
Here. And
Ted's got to be here. Ted,
So I thought what I'll do first, I've been trying to do at least one of these for each episode, just to give you an idea of what it was like for the people that were there at the time, what they went through. It's real easy to say, all the women got together and, boycotted something. And again, they didn't call it a boycott. That word wasn't really used till much, much later on, century later. And, it was just, they weren't buying the products coming across the water, plain and simple. And to have homespun, one of your picks from that other episode, Martha Washington, she really announced it as far as, when she came in after the war to see George Washington, she came back and forth. I talked about her coming and bringing socks and, going back and telling the ladies this is what they need. And, of course, they'd try to get together, make shirts or whatever it was. But she came back to see George Washington. She was all in American made, homespun. What did that mean? In a lot of cases, it was hemp. It was cotton. It wasn't just wool and things like that. Hemp were the sails on all the ships, hemp. The Declaration of Independence was written on hemp. The Constitution's written on hemp. All of this is written on. I'm telling you, hemp was everywhere.
No wonder why they were all so happy.
Oh gosh, yeah. I don't think they did. I should do an extra bonus round, like around Halloween or something, on the Hellfire Caves and Ben Franklin and everything else. Because boy, that's a story. What Ben Franklin, the real skeletons he had in his closet. But the thing was about homespun, and it's real easy to say we're going to boycott Bud Light. If you drink Bud Light, it's not hard if you don't drink it, right? I mean, that's a good example. I'm not going to buy it. I've given up stuff. It was really, it wasn't difficult, but it meant something. So it's a personal thing as well. But for these people, it was survival. So when they weren't getting sugar and things like that from across the ocean, they had to come up with different things to do. One of those was wool. And I think this little short right here is going to give you another look into. So for the featurette we do for these episodes of what was it like to be the people at that time, I think this is perfect for that. So this one is got to do with textiles. Lynn, do you know anything about this, or is this brand new to you too? Or because it is to me, just thinking of doing laundry.
It's new. This part's new to me. Yes. So I'm anxious to see it.
Yeah, it's let me see if I can make it the right one. The idea of just doing the laundry, just going out and getting a wild turkey, cleaning the wild turkey, putting it all together. It's so much easier to say it than it is, easier said than done. So let's see what these guys. These guys are absolutely wonderful. This is the Museum of Revolutionary War Museum. It's actually not that, hasn't been around that long, but they do a great job. So let's see what they got to say. Hear it?
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Gretchen, and we're on our Revolution War era farm here at the American Revolution Museum at Yorktown. And as a mid-war farm, we talk a lot about the changes that go on for the free and enslaved people living here during the Revolutionary War. And one of the big changes for them is textile production and their role in textile production. So before the Revolutionary War, 90+% of the fabric is coming to the colonies from England. And England is really the only place we're getting it from, or at least through England. So imagine there's one store in town that you shop at, and now that store is closed. So think about all of the ways that you would have to make up for that. And fabric production takes a lot. So sometimes if I'm spinning, or if I'm doing some sewing, or if I'm sitting at the loom and weaving, people will say, oh, are you making clothes? But there's a lot that goes into that. So if it's wool, if it's a protein fiber like wool, you would have to have sheep or have access to sheep. You would have to tend those sheep. You would have to wait for their wool to grow long enough so that you could shear it, which means cut it. You would have to wash it and dry it, and then you would have to card it. And that's like brushing it out. Then you would have to spin it, and that might be with a drop spindle or a spinning wheel, where you maybe get to sit down and use a pedal, or maybe you have to stand up to use the spinning wheel. Then once it's into thread, and you would need thousands and thousands of yards of that thread or that yarn, you would have to then set it up on a loom. Maybe you don't have a loom. Maybe you have no idea how to weave. And so you would have to learn that, or you would have to find someone who does have a loom. And then you would have to set all those yarns up on the loom, and then you would have to weave, and it's going to take you hours and hours of work at that loom to weave enough fabric for what you need. So people in the 18th century typically are wearing 8 to 10 yards of fabric. That's a lot of fabric that you're going to need. Are you just going to leave it sheep colored or plain cotton or linen colored? Maybe you want to put color on it. That's another process. You have to dye it. Then you have to come up with the dye materials. Did you purchase them? Did you grow them? Did you find them in nature? You're going to have to process those, and you're going to have to boil them down and sift all that stuff out and have a nice clear dye pot. And then you're going to have to dye the yarn or dye the fabric. Then you're going to have to dry it, wash it, dry it back out again. You're going to have to cut it into a shape, sew it into an outfit. Maybe you're really good at simple things like aprons, but are you good at making short gowns? Maybe, maybe not. So that might be another skill you have to learn. And not only are you doing all of that, but you're also working a farm still. You might have a 50 to 200 acre farm and you're growing on 20 of that at a time. So it's like having a full-time job and making all of your clothes from scratch, which is quite a bit. Now, luckily in the 18th century, most young girls have learned to spin. They've learned to sew, but most people are not weavers. Weaving is a 5 to 7 year apprentice trade, and it's not something that everybody knows how to do. So now the question is, are you going to learn how to do it? Are you going to teach one of the people that are enslaved on the farm how to do it? Are you going to find a weaver and take all of your yarn that you've spun to him? And if you're taking a lot of your time to spin the yarn, what's not getting done on the farm? So you're probably never going to make enough fabric to outfit the whole family. You're just going to make enough to patch up pre-existing garments until you're got to have enough to be able to go buy them again. So maybe once the war is over, but the war lasts at least 8 years. So imagine 8 years of having to patch up your own clothing until you're able to buy it again. So it's a lot of change for all of the people living on the farm, for the children, for the free and enslaved men and women and children on the farm, for the farmer or the enslaver, and also for the farmer's wife. So everybody's going to have to pitch in. They're all going to have a role of some sort in fabric production on the farm, whether it's spinning or carding. They talk about 3 and 4 year olds knowing how to card in the 18th century.
Oops. Drinking warm water before bed balances blood sugar levels and reverses type.
Really, everybody on the farm would be able to help out in that process.
Handle that. All right. So that's pretty cool. If you think about it, everything she just said you have to go through for what? A shirt? So when you're hearing about the Continental Army didn't have clothes, they didn't have uniforms, they didn't have socks, they didn't have shoes. This is why whatever they had was well worn out by the time they got to Valley Forge, and then that horrible winter. And they're literally cutting apart blankets to wrap around their feet. Like I said, you cannot emphasize enough about the suffering these people went through. Because once you take on a battle like this, it's a lot easier to say, go do this, or go start a battle, or go start a fight, or go start a war. It's like that speech that Mel Gibson's character gave in Patriot. It's going to be on your front lawn, going to be in your street, in your town, your shops, at your job, at your children's school. So you have to think through and hope that calmer, cooler heads and their better angels prevail. Because when you look at this and you see, you better understand when you say, I'm going to boycott, 3% of the population, really, let's say a third, because of the Stamp Act. And then you're also going against the 2/3 of people that you live with, your neighbors, your family, that, 1/3 just wants to be left alone. And the other third is for the other side. And now you're neighbor against neighbor, brother against brother. And this also, again, name your country has been through this. But in the United States, the very new United States, the first time that this really happened was during the Revolutionary War. And then again in the Civil War, and, several other, skirmishes that, and shorter wars, 1812 and all that. But those two were really the one where you're battling neighbor against neighbor and not really knowing who's who, which is why we get into Turn, and, all that spy stuff is so intriguing. Again, you might be going through something like that now. You might feel one way, and the pressure's so on and the vibration is so high. Lynn knows exactly what I'm talking about. You might be at an office situation where everybody you work with is just completely thinking 180 degrees from what you're thinking. You can't quite put your finger on, what's going on there. But it is kind of like that stand thing, Lynn, where, people are kind of pulling one side to the other,
Yeah.
And I think it happened really quick with a lot of people not even realizing it. And I think it must have happened to them too, Lynn, Don't you think they felt it in the air, and before like the Boston, massacre and all the things, look how long that took, through episodes 1 and 2. It didn't just start 1776. Hey, let's have a war. Bam, stand back. Let's throw some tea in the harbor and get some guns. It wasn't like that. It took a long drag out time, and the war itself, 8 years. So now we're in the tail end, really. I think we start out in, 78, 79, all the way to 81 tonight. And some of these people now, they're making a little bit of reputation for themselves. You've got, of course, the founding fathers, of course, the beginning and the whole thing were these wonderful lawyers and people like Patrick Henry and Ben Franklin, and everybody had a hand in it, and now we're at the point where George has pulled some things. He's shown that he can think on his feet, adapt and overcome. He's great at deception, which is wonderful because, listen, if you're a commander that can get your people to follow you and you're up against, way outnumbered, way outgunned, this man didn't get out-generaled. He was trying to keep the Continental Army alive long enough, because if he jumped into every daggum fight that everybody was telling him to jump into, this whole thing would have been over in a year, and we would definitely stayed under the king's rule, because he didn't have help. I just showed you a video of what you have to go through to make, what did she say, Lynn, 10 yards of material?
Yes, like days and days. And not only that, they also had their chores of taking care of the farm, taking care of the household. Many of these women had multiple children. Usually they're breastfeeding a baby while they're taking care of another one in addition to everything else. So,
good Lord, and what happens? Your husband goes off because, he sees this ad in the paper. George Washington's looking for soldiers. Hey, Billy Bob and the guys, down at the old barn, they're all going. I can't just stay here. And, so meanwhile, he goes off to war. You think you're going to be gone 3 months. It's, most of these guys, this one gentleman who rode all the way through, and we see him in this episode tonight. He was there the whole 8 years. Thought he was going to sign up. You remember what I'm talking about? He's this young kid. He ate the oxtail and got sick. He had kept wonderful journals all the way through. It's just amazing, priceless find, find to have. But, and some of them left and deserted early, all the things. We've got to think about this in terms of how does these things really affect us? There's a lot going on in the world now. And it's real easy to read a headline and blow it off. And it's real easy to, not want to look at things, but as light workers, we have to put out as, even if we put out a little bit of light, it's going to dispel a lot of darkness. And you have to be able to do that to where you can gain enough out of this earth for yourself. And remember, there's beautiful things in this world still. And fill yourself with that light and vibration, then go put a little light out into the world to combat all this darkness, and then go back and do it again. That's kind of what we're doing right now. You don't have to stay out there and fight till you drop. That's what good are you going to do? You got to take care of yourself too. But I'm showing you these people to show you that others have done it under great odds, against great odds, amazing things, and like Lynn said, you got to raise the sheep. You got to feed the sheep. You got to take care of the sheep. You got to keep the sheep from being stolen and killed or burnt in a barn or killed and taken in a raid by either British soldiers going through or loyalists going through, and they think that you're, a rebel, or the other way around. Your husband's left, your dad's left, you're left with kids, you got smallpox, you got
3 meals a day.
Joke.
Yeah.
No joke.
And laundry, and
and you got to make wool. So what do? They get together. Not everybody's doing everything. You're trading off. And I want you to remember that, because that is very good to go back to when, everybody's having a hard time, paying for the extras. Maybe some people are having a hard time paying for the have-tos, raise your hand if you know somebody. I sure do, myself included.
Yeah.
You just get careful. You get careful. You know, you don't just throw stuff away. And I know these people did too, but if they did it, you can do it. And I hope you find stuff in here that inspires you, whether it's the words or the will of the person, because there's not one person in here other than the extremely evil, like General Rao. You haven't met him yet. You'll meet him next week. And people like that who just got off on the power and the torture and the extreme hypocrisy of some of it. We've touched on that. Listen, slavery was going on, and Lynn and I both agree that I don't think you can name a culture that wasn't involved in slavery one way or the other.
That's
and
true.
It's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing, and it should never, ever, ever, ever happen. It's happened, but right now, while we speak, there's more slavery going on in this earth right now than is ever in the history of time. And if you don't know that, you're not paying attention. And it's okay if you don't want to dig into it. So you don't have to take my word for it, but I ain't lying. Lynn, agreed?
No, I totally agree with you.
So, you can't not talk about it though. We can't cut it out of this episode. We can't cut it out of, the Revolutionary War, because listen, history is history. And if you do not, learn from it, you're destined to repeat it. George Santayana. Okay. And the thing is you put it right out front on your freaking porch and you give it a damn cocktail, but you don't hide it. You don't change it. You don't go into Wikipedia 3:00 in the morning and change the history of a person, especially if that person is running for an important position. You don't put you put the truth out there and you let the people decide, right? So you put the truth of the history out there and you let the people decide, because it's hard enough to glean the facts from all the bullshit. Because again, what do you know about George Washington? Once you get past, he's on the dollar bill, first president, first, to command the First Continental Army, and a couple other things. And somewhere along the line, Cherry Tree, Cannot Tell a Lie is coming out. That's totally made up. He might have liked these, and somebody said about, or somewhere along the line. The truth is he did many miraculous things. He wasn't a horrible general. He was a general given something. He didn't have an army, and he didn't have any supplies, and he had everybody backing him. These people were up against incredible odds. So if you're up against incredible odds, you maybe can pick up a couple of pointers. Lynn, what do you want to say?
And if it hadn't been for him, we wouldn't have the freedoms that we have now. So, I mean, he did miraculous things, and and he even had that vision, also that he spoke of, that he was entrusted with through spirit, for that matter. So, he had to be a good guy.
More than once, right, Lynn? More than once.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times people remember, I believe you're referring to, there's been a couple of famous paintings of seeing George Washington kneeling down in the snow near his horse. And I forget the horse's name. I had it written down. I didn't bring it in my notes tonight, though. But I'll get it. I just don't want to say the wrong thing, because he had 3 really special ones, and it was very special to him, very much like fabric and wood grain and wallpaper was to him, But and then he spoke to an angel appeared to him and told him about a couple of different, showed him 3 different stages of the America, right? Or something along those lines. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me, that's what I was talking about.
Yep. And there was more than one. There's a few, one in his tent and a couple of other ones. But maybe we can get deeper into it later on in the event. But I think that's important to remember. A lot of these people had those divine interventions, or again, a lot of people say you look at that either way. But of course, both sides are going to look at it different. But I think you got to accept them when they come too. We just had one a couple of weeks ago where a person turned her head, and but like a quarter of an inch, the world changes. Say what you want, the world changes. So this too, I'm going to show you a quick little video here that I did for my guy. I picked Benedict Arnold. Now, the same is true for Benedict Arnold. When I say to you, name the things about Benedict Arnold, top of your head, and depending on your history, depending on what you've picked up or the latest movie you've seen or whatever, how they, portrayed him, that's how pretty much you're going to lean, right? Treason. Benedict Arnold, his name is synonymous with treason and committing a turncoat, right? So I wanted to show you a little bit about that because it also fits into our interest in what causes a character or a human being to change and to flip. He was such a strong warrior, such a great fighter, such a great leader. And I pulled this because I wanted to show you how devoted a patriot he was. Not just how he fought on the battlefield and how he instructed and how he held up in battle and his bravery and everything else, because he had all that. And he won several different tight battles. And one big one you're going to hear about that he didn't even get the credit for, because he was in the medical tent getting his leg treated the second time, same damn leg, right? Oh man. And he would not let anybody amputate it. He sat there with several rifles, several loaded weapons around him, said, anybody that tries to cut my leg off, I'll shoot you and kill you right there. This guy had some gumption. This guy had some chutzpah, but he started out as someone who honor meant a lot. And he pushed through and something else, a blow, almost like a Job kind of story. But he kept pushing through, on a smaller scale, of course. You bust out in blisters and all this other stuff. But he did go through. He lost his first wife. He was left a widower with 3 sons. He gave up a huge part, if not all of his fortune, to fight into this war and for the cause. He kept getting passed over for promotions because he was from a small state. I believe it was Rhode Island, Connecticut, one of the two. I don't want to get it wrong. And they had a quota, and he kept getting passed over, for promotions for lesser, leaders that hadn't done a quarter of what he had done. And it was just crazy. Very close to George Washington. Very, very close. Which is why when all of the incident happened, it just about crushed George Washington. I'll say, along with all the historians and everybody else who knows much wiser than I'll ever be, I don't think he ever got over it. It's that husband that you find cheating, and that they're crushed, that, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, whatever it is, the betrayal of a friend, of whatever, that you really trusted. And that blow, like a horse kicked you in the chest, right, Lynn? So here it is, my guy. Listen, I'm just going to stand by him for tonight and say, listen, I kind of get, I could never get to a point, I don't believe, that I could ever turn like he did at that last minute. But I think he was broken enough, and the right people worked on him at a vulnerable time in his life. Not an excuse, but a possibility, and it turned him. And hence that's why you get the name Turn for our series at the end of this, Lynn. So here we go, Benedict Arnold. Anything before we start, sweetie?
Nope, I'm ready. I got my chips and salsa. And
here we go. I got my popcorn. Yeah, I got my popcorn. I'm going to get some more hot water though, so I'll be right back.
Too, actually.
Here we go.
These are the times that try men's souls, he wrote. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. But the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. Paine's words spread like wildfire amongst the patriots that winter. His American crisis essays were read in taverns and churches, courthouses and state houses, and on the banks of the Delaware, in the tents and around the campfires of Washington's army.
Yeah, buddy. Well, that's it. Benedict Arnold was a little bit more than just a guy who turned. And you have to wonder, because I really wanted to lean into this one a little bit, because I'm wondering if you know anybody that you were good friends with, or in your family, or, a neighbor you used to talk to, or somebody at work you used to talk to, and then all of a sudden it seemed like they just turned. Now, they might not have turned against what you think, but maybe turned a little nuts, or or a little different, or a disagreement that was felt enough to where it would make a difference. Do you know what I mean? And maybe to help not understand them more, but to understand how life can put different pressures on people, and people just take a turn. I think that also means not just a 180, Lynn, but a turn, like a left turn or a right turn or a wrong turn, because I think we're seeing a lot of people doing that in our life too. And you know what I mean?
Yes.
Did you have anything you want to say about that?
No, I was listening to you, but yeah, recently I've noticed a lot of people doing that, especially since dimensionally things are shifting and changing. We're going more up into the fifth dimension, and it's hard living in two worlds, dealing with third dimensional stuff and fifth dimensional stuff. And it does make it look like people are going in the opposite direction, or all of a sudden changing direction. And you can't really expect anything or rely on anybody but yourself.
That's true. And again, it's just, I say it to show that hard times, and the pressures, sometimes people don't react, and it's almost a good thing. It's almost a blessing, because if they're around you if things got really bad, you wouldn't want that. You know what I mean? You can kind of send good vibes towards them and hope that they do well. But, it's almost like being in an ocean in some kind of a catastrophe where you wind up in the ocean with a bunch of people. You don't want to be around the guy that's like drowning everybody he gets near. You know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah.
So think about it that way. But here's another little thing I just wanted to tell you guys real quick too. And again, I'm not trying to be an advocate for him, but to show you how much of a turn he took, Benedict Arnold was an extreme patriot. And he even had all his men. His men would follow him anywhere. They even left the command of another general on a battlefield when the battlefield kind of got split between two commanders. And they went with Arnold and away from this general, which was, believe me, it was spoken about. But he had his men. This part of the Declaration of Independence stirred his soul as much as it does mine when I read it. And that's why I played the little 56 video, the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence at the beginning of the show, because I love this phrase, and it's at the end of the Declaration of Independence, and it says, "We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." And that is the final sentence of the Declaration of Independence. Now, Benedict Arnold thought so much of that he made up his own code of honor. Vixen Doe, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the honey and a nip. Thank you, darling. We appreciate you so much. The show thanks you. This channel thanks you. And yes, please hit the like. Please, if you can, that's a nice way to for free that you can help us out. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to it. Share it out if you can. Also, I'd love it if you grab the playlist and you watch this with a kid who's maybe not getting this in school. You can cut all of me out you want. Get them to watch The Liberty. That's the main thing, because I think this documentary really sticks to very close to as much truth that was available at the time that this was made. So, Lynn, did you have anything you wanted to say on that?
Yeah,
and thank you so much, Vixen. Thank you.
For the algorithms, also, please press the notification bell.
Oh, yes, please.
So, yeah, it's a big deal for the algorithms now, since it's all about the algorithms. So,
yes, yeah. It is. And thank you so much. And comment on the videos if you can. All those are free ways to help out. And I appreciate so much every little bit. And I just like, you being here and having a good time and putting in your comments and, your knowledge, throwing it up in the chat. That makes it so wonderful. So without further ado, Lynn, I think we can just get down on it. What do you think?
Woo-hoo.
Liberty. I love it. Woo. Remember that song? Get down on it. Ooh, what's it?
That's right.
You know what? There was some good songs. I can remember having a good time dancing to a few of those old disco songs. As much as I said I hated it, and I just heard my band finally retired. They did their final tour. AC/DC. Angus, we love you. We love you. Way to go out with class, my friend. We lost Malcolm.
Yeah, you're getting older when the elevator music changes to the music of your generation.
Yeah,
you're jamming.
No shit.
Yeah, you're jamming in the aisles of the grocery
when you're hearing
store,
Highway to Hell and an elevator music, man, it's like, okay, man, this is really it. This is the end.
That is for real.
Here we go, my friend.
Woohoo.
Enthralled by it. This is so good. This is so good. Thanks for being here.
Hello, I'm Forrest Sawyer. In this, Program 5 of Liberty, the war shifts to the southern states. I grew up in the South, surrounded by powerful reminders of the Civil War, not the American Revolution. But as we shall see, the southern states played a decisive role in the war that created this country. The War of Independence was, until Vietnam, the longest ever fought by the United States. And in 1780, when our episode begins, the conflict has become a question of who can hold out the longest. On the American side, the states are bankrupt, and there are mutinies among the ragged, ill-fed soldiers. In England, Members of Parliament are getting impatient. While the war drains the treasury, the rebellion drags on. Stalemated in the north, the British now decide to focus on the south, a volatile land fraught with old feuds and rivalries. Here, the British see a chance to divide and conquer.
Travelers in the 18th century, coming down from the north, enter a wild and strange land. The air becomes increasingly hot and humid. Deadly mosquitoes spread malaria with its unending fevers. People blame the swamp air, thick and steamy, unbreathable even at night. This is the Tidewater region, the low country of the Carolinas and Georgia. But there is another South. It is not yet the South of cotton fields and huge plantations.
Thank you, honey.
Even so, it is thriving and sophisticated. In coastal towns like Williamsburg, Virginia, wealthy tobacco planters and traders socialize at elegant balls and dinners. In Charleston, South Carolina, they attend America's first permanent theater. Paradoxically, these wealthy Americans fight for their liberty while enslaving much of their own population. Before the shooting war even started, the British were ready to exploit this contradiction.
Let us encourage the Negroes in the southern provinces to rise up against their masters. Let us send some regiments to support them in carrying the design into execution. The Negroes will arise and steep their hands in the blood of their masters.
First throwdown of the race card. There you go, folks.
December 1779. The war in America has been going on for 5 years and is at a stalemate. For England, it has expanded into a world war with her archenemy, France. British colonies around the world are under attack, and France seems poised to invade England itself. The American war has become a costly sideshow. The British are growing desperate. General Henry Clinton sets sail from New York. He leaves behind a garrison of troops to tie down Washington's army. His destination is Charleston, South Carolina, the commercial and political center of the American Lower South.
The decision to go south was really a last attempt. They failed in New England, they failed in the middle colonies, as they regarded them, and where else could they go? The answer was that they could attempt to go south, that they could pacify the entire South, and then use that as a springboard from which they could reconquer the rest of the colonies.
Clinton lays siege to Charleston. The entire Southern Division of the American Army defends the city valiantly for 6 weeks. But in May, Charleston falls to the British. 16-year-old Eliza Wilkinson keeps a diary recording the events of the day.
A day of sorrow. I have seen my countrymen bound and dragged away. So many young men have died in her defense. Now America must fall. We are entirely at the mercy of the British soldiers. Even women are being sent to the prison ships. Do the Britons think that they'll conquer America this way? We may be led, but we'll never be driven.
There you go.
The entire Southern Army
Here's to you,
is
Liza.
captured. Most of South Carolina falls into British hands. Georgia has been pacified, and North Carolina will soon follow.
I swear it gets real ugly.
A delighted General Clinton reports back to London.
With greatest pleasure, I report to your lordship that the inhabitants from every quarter rush to declare their allegiance to the king. I may venture to assert that there are few men in South Carolina who are not either in arms with us or our prisoners.
Since
you
the beginning
imagine?
of the war, the British have issued 2 extraordinary proclamations offering protection to slaves who run away from their patriot masters.
Here we go.
They gave the African Americans the knowledge that they could become involved in this war, and that force could work toward their own freedom. They could work among the British, they would have occupations, they were paid by the British, and the march from plantations to the Clinton forces was for them a freedom march.
We ask for nothing more than is our right. We are the creatures of that God who made all nations of the earth of one blood and one kindred. We are no more obliged to serve you than you to serve us. The more we consider the matter, the more we are convinced we were not created to be slaves.
It became very apparent to British military leadership that racial manipulation might be used successfully to bring white Southerners to heel. It created widespread panic among white Southerners because every Southerner, whether he or she was a slave owner or a non-slave owner, feared the prospect of a massive slave uprising. They all felt their own vulnerability.
A Negro man named Charles ran off from me last night. I believe he intends to try to get to the British. He may prove resolute and daring if endeavored to be taken. His leaving was from no cause of complaint or dread of a whipping, for he has always been remarkably indulged. Indeed, too much so. But from a determination to get his liberty by flying to the British. He's very black, has a large nose, and is about 5 feet 8 or 10 inches high. I will give £5 to any person who secures him.
These actors are something, aren't
The
they?
British
They're
see the
good. They're so
proclamations
good.
as a powerful
Every one of
weapon
them.
to destabilize the South. But the Patriots are determined to hold on to their slaves. They unite in opposition to the British.
And so in a great irony, the retention of this slave system becomes a significant objective of the revolution in the South. So we have a revolution on behalf of freedom and independence. And part of the freedom and independence is the maintenance of the slave system.
Just like the Civil War. And the same, both sides.
A victorious
for
Clinton
different reasons.
returns to New York,
Crazy.
leaving the South under the command of General Charles Cornwallis,
Here he
a
comes.
40-year-old aristocrat and professional soldier. Cornwallis is charged with executing the second part of the strategy to conquer the South. The British are aware that a large percentage of the population has never supported the revolution. For the first time in the war, the British intend to make these loyalists a key component of their war effort.
Now here it comes. Now neighbors
The
are
plan
joining.
is to conquer an area and then put loyalists in charge.
The idea is that you send in a relatively small force, certainly far smaller than the force Howe took to Staten Island in 1776. You send in a relatively small force. That defeats whatever major unit, patriot units you have in the area. And once those patriot units have been defeated, the loyalists are encouraged to rise, to organize themselves in a militia, that militia will terrorize their opponents and in effect take over the civil government and produce resources and recruits for the British, and that this process will be extendable throughout the South. So it is a new strategy.
It's all new. It's all
new.
It
is a strategy doomed from the start. The British have no idea that they are walking into a hornet's nest. Their loyalist allies have little enthusiasm for the British cause. They are mainly interested in revenge against the Patriots. The loyalists tend to be recent immigrants, poor Scots-Irish who have settled the backcountry. These new arrivals have been treated with contempt by the established, well-to-do gentry, and there is bad blood between them.
I wanted to stop it real quick because I wanted to ask Lynn, what happens when you give people power, Lynn? Any humans, any group.
They go into their ego and they try to manipulate and control.
Exactly. And if you've got a people like this, you know, the British don't care. They're not here. They don't have any backstory on the people, what's been going on in the colonies. They just come in and they see a commodity of, hey, there's some loyalists here. This is how we can gain more guns, more people, more, you know, asses in seats. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And they don't know what's going on here. But you've had a turmoil, a boiling of a slow cooker, if you will, of these pockets of, Hatfield McCoy kind of stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Loyalists against, people that were perfectly fine, healing to the king and didn't care about this freedom thing and all this united what, they just want to be left alone and, eat, and you've got these families now torn apart because how long has it been? You're years into this thing. You've got grandma with 4 orphans and drunk Uncle Kenny, trying to, the farm, now they're trying to make their own wool and trade and all this going on at once. And now you got this powder keg and the British soldiers come in, the general sees it and says, scoop them up. Now they're working for us. Tell them we want them to go out and find pockets of rebels and, get them to turn or, prisoners. Everybody had their own rules. But when you give people power like that in a powder keg, what you're about to see is how ruthless it gets. And what I mean by in your own backyard, man. Because these people that thought that they were okay being rural out in the middle of nowhere are so easy to be taken over by these mobs like your, Quantrell's Raiders and so many more in the Civil War. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's just a theory, but I think this is a big mistake because look what happens. You ready, Lynn?
Yeah, it is. And it is especially because, too, they didn't have rules or laws behind it. So these people that were sent out to find the rebels sometimes would just kill families that were believed to be rebels, whether they were or not.
Just for revenge, for their own personal gain, or it's like the kid who gets picked in high school becomes a prison guard. You know what I mean? And just just foot up a prisoner's butt all day long, that kind of thing. Yes. It's just for the mere fact of it. And now you're given power. Look, this happened again. It happened probably in every war you can name. Still going on today, but. When are we going to understand what causes this stuff so we can prevent it? Because we brought that up in episodes 1 and 2 when Samuel Adams was having trouble and having talks with people like John Adams and Paul Revere, over some lukewarm, pretty bad beer, from what I understand, and trying to decide how do you trigger the emotion of a large group of people without turning it into an angry mob. And here we go again, and it's going to get ugly. Lynn, you good?
Yes, I'm good.
It's, I'm trying not to stop it, but I had to say something
They're
there.
Descended from Britons, perhaps, but they are one step removed from the brutes. There's no authority, no churches, schools, and no law. Fighting, brawling, fornicating are gloried in, practiced in the open noonday.
They called us a pack of beggars. Their Charleston gentry in their fine linens. And who were your ancestors a few years back?
The British armed these backwoods loyalists and put them into positions of power. The loyalists seized the opportunity to settle old scores. British soldiers were soon horrified by the actions of their southern allies.
It's like Cold Mountain. If you ever saw that movie.
We approach the farm and we see pastures
horrible
with the carcasses of dead cattle and horses. We walk into the plantation house, but everything is silent. On the floor are the smashed fragments of porcelain figurines which had been collected by the owner. On the shelf in their stead, we see 5 severed human heads. And then, oh, the barbarians. There lay a pregnant woman murdered in her bed. They had cut open each of her breasts with stabs from their bayonets. And above the canopy they wrote in our own blood, "Thou shalt never give birth to a rebel."
Patriots fight back.
Both
They
sides.
form partisan bands, burning farms, torturing and killing suspected Tories.
Both sides.
Friend and foe alike were often pillaged, and indiscriminately. People who had publicly declared their neutrality were pillaged by both sides. All sides were involved, and all sides were guilty of the cruelest barbarities against one another.
I come home after 6 months of hunting Tories, and there is the wreckage of our farm. And I find Mother. They tied her up and whipped her. She's a widow, but they stole everything they could and burned the house. I join up with another company, and we go to the house of a Tory named Campbell. We capture a few of them. We shoot a fellow named McPherson, and Campbell was spigoted. It works like this. First, we hammer a sharp pin through a block of wood, and then it was Tom Archer. He got hold of Campbell and he pushed his foot on the spike, and then he turns him round and round till the pin runs clear through his foot. Cruel, you think? I loved seeing Campbell spigoted. We figured he was part of the gang that horsewhipped a helpless widow. What had she ever done except telling her son to be true to the cause?
The British strategy of using loyalists to pacify the South is proving to be disastrous. They had come to reestablish royal authority and have ended up igniting a bloody civil war. Cornwallis is frustrated and perplexed.
If the Loyalists allow themselves to be plundered and their own families ruined by these rebel bandits, how do they expect us to protect them?
In 1780, George Washington is with the main American forces outside of New York, locked in a stalemate with the British Army stationed in the city.
Hey, Midwest. How you doing, hon?
He and his soldiers have suffered 2 devastating winters at Valley Forge and Morristown. His thoughts turn to his beloved Mount Vernon, which he hasn't seen in 6 years. He writes to his cousin managing the estate.
I wait here with impatient anxiety for news from the South. I can do nothing. Do you have any prospects of getting paint? I trust you have taken care of the fallen trees and the hedges.
He loved,
How many lambs do you have this
you know,
spring?
Mount Vernon so much.
Write me how many horses I now own. Mrs. Washington tells me that she's taken a fancy to a horse belonging to James Cleveland. If he is as fine a horse as is claimed, try to get him. I shall be very pleased if you do.
I love that. If you do.
1780 was a low point because both
Bless his heart.
militarily and politically things look bad. There's no money. States are broke.
He's got
And
nothing.
the army is in terrible condition, not being supported. So I think you have a lot of
not being fed,
disillusionment, and
freezing to death,
feeling that maybe we've made a terrible mistake. I think there was that, in that sense, psychologically, it was a low point as well.
It's hard to kick up morale after that, man.
At this
I
moment,
don't know how they did
Washington and the country get devastating news.
And blow after blow.
General Benedict Arnold,
Here we
Washington's
go.
most brilliant general and one of the Revolution's greatest heroes, has become convinced that the Americans are losing the war. He has gone over to the British.
When Arnold's treachery was discovered, it was far more than just a major American general turning over to the enemy. Arnold was an incredible figure in the minds of the Americans. This was not just a general that led an army. This was one who led them across the field in combat, who had accomplished incredible feats at Fort Ty in front of Quebec, at Valcour Island, at Saratoga.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible blow on the Americans' belief in themselves. If Arnold has turned traitor, what else can happen to us? Can we last? Can we survive?
It's passionate.
It was the great betrayal of Washington's life.
I don't think he ever got over it. Yeah, me either.
And yet, Washington, for all the gloom in the 6th year of the war, never lost faith, at least publicly, and that's what counted. Washington understood this was not a military conflict in the conventional, certainly the old world sense. This was ultimately a test of political endurance. And while he, by temperament and inclination, would prefer to play the part of the lion, he learned to play the fox brilliantly. He only fought 9 battles in the Revolution, of which he only won 3. His genius was in keeping the cause alive.
Period. I have to stop it there because parallels blow my mind. If you're with me out there, think hard. Is there any other parallel out there that you may be going through or have seen recently that may fit this description? Because this man was a lion. Do you hear me? Mm-hmm. And he had to play the fox. And he had to keep the momentum and the movement alive. He had to keep an army alive. He had to guide them through a swamp. He had to hold them through a hard winter. He had to hold up their morale during times when all was lost. It didn't look lost. It was lost. This man was just spinning plates. Do you know what I'm saying? How many people do you know that kept a business going, just moving stuff around, and just not giving up and switching, adapting, and overcoming? This guy, that's why I bring up the cherry tree. Because one of the biggest things we know about him that's on the lips of kids probably today, I don't know, do they teach anything about Washington schools these days? Or, God help me. I don't want to see the history books they're showing kids right now.
Oh,
Clean up the schools. Clean up the schools, parents. What the hell? Come on. I don't have a kid in there. You don't want me at a PTA meeting. I'm telling you right now. You do not want me to show up in your local school district, But here's the deal. The biggest thing we know about him, that cannot tell a lie in the cherry tree, his biggest thing was deception and keeping the army moving and keeping the morale up and using brilliant tactics of making your cannon look more. He was the guy who took people and had them moving up behind trees so it would look like more on the horizon, so the British army would think he had more soldiers. Going off in the mist in the damn boat, the last boot off, man, like Mel Gibson and We Were Soldiers. That was Washington. I won't stand by and let people just say flippantly, "Oh, he lost more battles than he won." No, honey, he won the war. And I know somebody just like this who's doing the same damn thing. And if you can see it that way, things get so much easier, and you can understand why sometimes people act one way or act, act a little bit, foolish, to give the other side rope. And then once they get that rope, they yank it. Lying. I'm telling you. Lynn, you got anything?
No, I absolutely agree. And this is kind of the part next where he designates Major General Nathaniel Greene, and he comes into play.
Here we go.
This.
Yeah. Yep. I just love them. I mean, I have mass respect for everybody in here. I'm not too quick to judge one way or the other, and them using the race card and everything. And of course, that wasn't the first time it was ever used, because listen, biological warfare, all this stuff has been going on for centuries. But to think 248 years ago, they were still doing the same stuff they're pulling now. Wise up, people. We're all human beings, one race, human race, period. Why are we all getting a little excited about a little extra melatonin? Stop it. It's culture. We'll never understand each other's culture. That's fine. We can respect it, and just don't get, whatever yours going on over there, don't get it on mine, period. It's worked for millennia, and chill. And that's it. We don't need a war. War sucks. This is horrible. It's about to get worse. So go ahead, Lynn. I'm sorry.
And the fact too that we're all connected, and and slavery back then wasn't just African American.
No,
there were a lot of other people from other areas.
Cherokees own Cherokees.
Yeah, there were used in slavery as well.
If I've got, and it was, African Americans catching and selling the African Americans to the guys coming over on the boats. I mean, come on. It's just, know your history. Every culture, and it's wrong in every culture, in every language, period. Human beings don't own human beings. I'm not even sure if we should own dogs. And the only way I'm cool with it is I'm pretty sure that they own us. Cats, come on now. I came in today. My cats are sprawled out on my bed. They've got 5-6 bowls of different kind of food that they can choose from. They are cats with choices. I have a good reason I do that, because I don't trust any food. And I figured if they'll know better than me, they could pick their own. Because what do I know? I'm not going to eat it and taste test it, And cats are very smart, as far as picky about what they eat. They won't eat something bad for them. So if they don't eat it, it goes outside. If the birds won't eat it, whatever. The bugs can eat it, and the birds can eat the bugs. I don't care. It doesn't go to waste. The thing is they're in charge. So I'm cool with it. But no, we shouldn't own anything like that. And if you're going to, I mean, come on, why are we even talking about this? How many wars do we need? Right? But you can't change the history. Again, this is just my opinion, but it's my show. And, you may disagree, but nobody's clean in this shit. So I don't know why people are getting uppity. And if you think you're full-blooded anything, you out of your damn mind. Because that's a very small percentage, I would say. When you can say something like, oh gosh, who's the mongrel that went around and just pillaging and just for Chad, help me out. Oh gosh, Gunga Din? No, not Gunga. The other one. Oh shoot. And it's supposedly 15% of the population is related to him because he did his job, whatever, his quest, well, because they pillaged so much. Thank you, Genghis Khan. Thank you, Khan. Yeah. So if that can be true, how many purebred anything do you think we've got? I'm not saying do that 23andMe, because I think there's some heinous chicanery going on behind that mess, and that's a hard pass for me. But as far as that goes, nobody's purebred anything. How many of those things have you seen, Lynn, where they get on there? It's like, do you think you know who you are, or whatever the hell the name of that show is? And they get on there, and guess what? You ain't black, or whatever. And they go, what? And there they are. Listen, I don't look like I've got Native American in me. I mean, I'll tell you what. But again, why are we judging like that? What difference does it make? Exactly. Your lifestyle and who you are and your character should perceive any of that. I mean, right? Judge not by the content, the color of your skin, but the content of your character. Why can't we get there? Why can't we? Hey, sweetie, how you doing, Nora? Why can't we get there? So again, this was used as a weapon. Then look, we'll scare all the white people. Say, oh my gosh, you're going to give them guns. They were still saying that in the Civil War, and I think several after that. I'm sure, because we're nuts. We're nuts. Because if you don't learn from history, you're destined to repeat it. That's why we're repeating it. Looks like we're repeating to me.
Yeah.
Lynn.
Yeah.
How many parallels? How many daggum parallels?
Way too many. And we have to be careful how we word it because we're on fluff tube and they'll pull it, but way too many parallels.
So many. And look at this man here. It wasn't for this man. If this man didn't have the brass, this guy walked in. I don't know how many horses he's had shot out from under him. So many bullet holes in his coat, his hat shot off. I can't even tell you. And to keep doing what he was doing with what, for somebody to did so much with absolutely freaking nothing, except the hearts and minds of the men who decided to continue to follow him and lived through it enough to be able to follow him because, bullets and disease and, took out quite a few. It's just an amazing time.
Keeping the army, such as it was, together.
Amazing.
It was that endurance that made him, even at the time, a legend.
Endurance. Remember that word. Endure.
Washington has one great hope: his alliance with the French. King Louis's money is sustaining the war effort, and France is now America's principal source of military supplies. Muskets, gunpowder, even uniforms. The American army is flooded with idealistic foreign volunteers.
This is amazing. This is amazing. Watch this.
The German Baron Wilhelm von Steuben, the Polish Colonel Tadeusz Kosciuszka, Count Casimir Pulaski. The most famous of them is a young, enthusiastic, and very well-connected French aristocrat named Marie-Joseph Paul Yves Roch Gilbert du Motier. Americans know him as the Marquis de
Lafayette. Fantastic human being.
19,
he really is.
Lafayette had become one of Washington's most trusted aides. He has returned to France to promote support for the revolution and writes Washington frequently.
Be so kind, mon cher général, as to present my best respects to your lady. Do not tell her, but I have a wife who is madly in love with you. Well, my feelings for you are too strong, but I can't object to her feelings. And indeed, all of Europe wants to see you so much that I have boldly affirmed that you will pay me a visit after the peace is settled. Oh, mon cher général, how happy I will be to embrace you again.
Washington's royal admirer, Lafayette, is a young man of royal birth with liberal politics and what Jefferson later called a canine appetite for fame. Someone said he was a statue in search of a pedestal, but he was intoxicated with a love, a rather theoretical love.
Love that line.
It was theoretical because liberty wasn't known to many Europeans. But he was a great romantic, and he fell in love with America, the concept of America that the French had, this wild new world where you could start the world over, to use Tom Paine's phrase. And he came to America, and he became, in effect, a surrogate son to Washington.
I think that Washington, when he met Lafayette, was charmed by this Gallic joie de vivre, by this very exaggeration and exuberance that this very young Lafayette, he was only 19 when he arrived in America.
19.
And I'm sure Lafayette had the best possible influence on loosening up Washington.
My dear Marquis, you invite me to visit France after independence. Remember, my friend, I don't speak your language, and I am too old to learn it. I cannot bear the idea that I would appear awkward and insipid in front of the ladies, especially in front of your young wife.
Such a cheeky monkey.
Convey to her, in any event, my most tender affection. Fan the flames of our love, and don't be afraid of a rival. Alas, in all of history, there's no example of a young woman preferring an old man if she follows her own real inclinations. George Washington.
It's fantastic.
Lafayette meets with Louis XVI and secures for Washington what he most wants from the king: a regiment of French troops to be sent to America.
Here we go, folks.
Lafayette fully expects to be the commander of this army. He is disappointed when King Louis chooses instead a far more experienced general, Count Jean-Baptiste de Rochambeau.
Rochambeau.
Rochambeau is horrified by what he finds in America.
To the Prince de Montbarret, Minister of War. Monsieur, the country is ruined. They have nothing, not a single coin. Washington's army grows and shrinks from moment to moment. Sometimes he claims he has 15,000 troops, sometimes only 3,000. Send men, money, and ships. But don't count on any help.
Send Lloyd guns and money.
Rochambeau and his 6,000 soldiers station themselves at Newport, Rhode Island, and wait for reinforcements.
Send it all.
Privately, Rochambeau is convinced that the Americans are near defeat.
We're in bad shape, man. We're in bad shape. Every time.
Washington realizes that he must reestablish an American military presence in the South. He sends his most able and trusted general, Nathaniel Greene.
Here he is.
Greene is appalled by what he finds.
I have never witnessed such scenes of desolation, bloodshed, and deliberate murder. Wherever you turn, the weeping widows and fatherless children pour out stories to shame humanity. And like the British invaders, we too have become savages. There's not a day goes by that some Tory, deluded as he may be, is not shot to death just for standing in his doorway.
Nathaniel Greene is a remarkable general, absolutely remarkable. Greene has learned one thing from history. He knows that you never have to win the battle in order to win the war. What Greene recognizes in the South very quickly is the side that ultimately secures the support of the people will prevail. And he designs his military strategy to win popular opinion. He knows that the best way to do that is to make the British presence unacceptable, to make the British presence so oppressive that the other side is preferable. That's his genius.
Greene leads Cornwallis on a 6-month chase through the backwoods, further and further from the British base on the coast, further and further from their stores of food and supplies. This strategy forces the British to plunder the countryside.
Very costly on the people.
They also liberate slaves and pursue a policy of pillage and burning.
The British Army appeared to be incapable of distinguishing between a loyal American and a rebel. They all looked the same. As a result, the British Army proved to be an extraordinary asset for the revolutionary cause. As the Americans confronted the enemy in the flesh and experienced firsthand the arrogance, the atrocities that occasionally came from British hands, needless to say, they became more ardent supporters of the revolution.
Cornwallis pursues Greene with a vengeance, from South Carolina into North Carolina, up to Virginia and back. In one long march north, with Greene crossing and recrossing rivers, the British, in furious pursuit, lose 500 men to heat, disease,
and now you're wet. Now you're wet. Oh my God.
There are a few generals who run oftener or more lustily than I do. I run as fast backwards as forwards to convince our enemy that we are like a crab. We can run in any direction as long as it's away.
As the months go by, Greene and his army succeed both in rallying popular support and in wearing down the British.
He loses every major engagement he fights. He loses at Guilford Courthouse. He loses at Hopkirk's Hill. He loses at 96th. He loses at Eutaw Springs. And nonetheless, his forces are gradually becoming more accepted by the the local populace.
Green strategy in the South is still admired by all professional military people. He went in and lost every battle, and he won the South. He fought and lost and rose and fought again. And in doing so, he reclaimed North, South Carolina, and Georgia. And he did it with his aircraft crew against some of the most magnificent leadership and troops that Europe had to offer.
Johann Ewald, a Hessian mercenary, has been with the British since the beginning of the campaign.
What other army in the world would put up with what these men do? Even our best disciplined German soldiers would desert in droves rather than face these conditions. Our generals would soon be all alone. I now see what enthusiasm, what these ragged fellows call liberty, can do. Out of this rabble rises a people who defy kings.
The people who defy kings.
By the summer of 1781, Cornwallis has spent 6 months chasing Green through the swamps and forests. He has nothing to show for it.
I've had a most difficult and dangerous campaign, often fighting 200 miles from anywhere against an enemy 7 times my number. A third of my army is sick and wounded, and I must carry them in wagons. The remainder are without shoes and are worn down with fatigue. It is time to find some place for rest and resupply. I assure you, I am quite tired of marching about the countryside in search of adventure. If we are to have an offensive war in the South, Clinton must abandon New York and bring his whole army to Virginia. So, now, what is our plan? If we don't have one, what are we doing here?
I gotta agree with the man. It's just like, what are we doing?
Didn't make any difference. Capturing Charleston didn't make any difference. Holding Boston, first stage of the war, didn't make any difference. Ultimately, it was like trying to stick a fork in a piece of jelly. It kept the revolution kept escaping from them because they couldn't hold territory, they couldn't cement loyalty, they couldn't create functioning administration, they couldn't restore the authority of the crown, which was the object of the exercise to begin with.
The sensation that you're winning the battles but you're not winning the war is very common in colonial warfare. It's what happened to the French in Indochina in their war against the people who were going to become the Viet Cong, and it happened to the Americans in Vietnam. You keep on winning the battles, but you're not winning the war. It's because you win, but you don't take control of the territory and you don't take control of the population. And in that hackneyed phrase, you don't have their hearts and minds. You can kill their soldiers, but your victories don't convince. People go on disliking you.
Can't kill an idea.
Cornwallis and his weary soldiers begin a retreat to set up a base camp on the coast.
He'll be regaining the sea, and it's always important for the British in North America to be with their back to the sea. They can be resupplied, evacuated, or reinforced as necessary.
Very important.
In August 1781, Cornwallis arrives at a small port on the Chesapeake Bay. His force of almost 10,000 soldiers includes British regulars, American loyalists, and several regiments of Hessian mercenaries. In addition, his army is supported by 5,000 black slaves. As Cornwallis has moved through the countryside, they have been fleeing to the British lines, expecting their freedom at the end of the war. The exhausted army settles in at a place whose name is to enter the history books: Yorktown, Virginia.
Real quick, I want to stop it here. It's almost done. I wanted to point out the fact that we must also understand in history that a lot of times, through how many countless times, we've seen these things come through. So far, we've seen the Iroquois fighting with the British, and then, coming through with Burgoyne down Lake Champlain and all of that. And then they get dispersed and pretty much, thrown away. We've seen it in the Civil War. We've seen it in all through the West and the conqueror, the whole thing, come with us. We'll give you pay, we'll give you uniform, we'll do all this, and then they get thrown away. Same thing is going to happen here, because no matter what happens, when you don't know where to go and civilization is getting reconditioned, where everybody's kind of picking their groups and trying to get away. This is one of the hardest things, and it happened to, again, so many cultures. When something takes over in a territory and everybody has to regroup, it's really awful. But you also have to understand that, again, like the gentleman said, anytime that there's this kind of a war, you have that because it's on your territory and you can't control it. There's nobody out there controlling. We always assume that there's somebody in charge that's not going to allow this to happen. We were on the good side. Look, this horror has happened on both sides. Everybody was guilty. I started this whole thing out, episode number 1 starting out. There was really no good side. There were good ideas. There were misunderstandings. There was an inevitable shift. Like I had to come through with my ancestors. It's unconscionable, but it was inevitable. For people to come over in boats, start a new land and just keep pushing whoever was there. I mean, my gosh, they came in and it was like, hey, look what we found. Nobody's here. Nobody's using it. And we're going, hey, yo, and again, it's the same thing. The story is in every daggum culture. The strong and the ones with the power are the ones that survive and push the ones that don't around, and again, we should be past that by now. Lynn, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. And just some of a little bit of trivia with
Nathaniel
Green. Nathaniel Green, when they were in South Carolina, he was actually signing promissory notes for clothing and shoes and food for his soldiers. And after the war ended, the government refused to reimburse him for those the promissory notes because it wasn't authorized. So he got stuck with that bill and ended up having to sell his house in Rhode Island. And he moved with his wife and his 5 children. He had 7 children, but 2 of them passed in infancy. So he moved with his wife and his 5 children to Georgia to run a rice plantation. Ironically, his wife brought along the tutor for the children, whose name was Phineas. I can't remember what his last name was. Let me see here. I wrote it down. Phineas. Well, anyway, the bottom line being, when General Green finally passed away, his wife's second husband was the tutor. So I thought that was interesting. And he also helped her run the rice plantation after General Green had passed away. So, it was not fair that he wasn't able to count on his country to reimburse him for the things
that happened to so many. Yeah. So many. And that's another thing that we forget in these wars. These people who pledged their everything, their fortunes, their, sacred honor, the whole shebang. The 56ers signed the Declaration of Independence, wiped out, totally ruined. Benedict Arnold, that was one of his things, totally ruined. He put all of his stuff up, and it was the people that were jealous. I don't think it would have gone so bad for Benedict Arnold. Very, very similar to Nathaniel Green. Lost children. His first wife died when he was out fighting the war. 3 orphan kids, like I said. Then he meets Peggy Shippen. Okay, now Peggy Shippen is in Philadelphia, excuse me. And her dad is kind of involved in, we're neutral. We're not really picking sides, because it was very British occupied. And she was coming of age. She was 16, much like this girl you see here, that she kept her diary and was reading, and being cheeky and saying, I won't play my, my songs for you and all this other stuff. Again, what was it like for these people? So she was about this age, 16, and now she's got British soldiers because her dad is, up there and throwing these social parties. And, of course, she's, dancing and, sipping the punch, and all that mess and, acting all coy and whatnot. And sure enough, Andre, Major Andre, who I like, I dearly love, and when you get a hold of Turn, you're going to absolutely love Major Andre. You know, correct me if I'm wrong after you see it. But anyhow, who wouldn't? I mean, Major Andre, let me see if I can do this and not kick the other one off. I bet I can I or not. Major Andre and Peggy Shipman. Listen, when these guys in their uniforms, you know, they get going. I mean, listen, let me see if I can do this. There's Peggy. This is one of the pictures of her. And this was after she had married Benedict. This is Benedict about the time, a little bit older than when he married Peggy. Right? So you can imagine, and this is, if I can pull it up, that's his that's the monument to his leg that got wounded twice in the same leg. And after he was you know, of course, a traitor, you know, you can't say any different, because he was going to turn in West Point. He was this whole thing with Andre, and Andre was a British spy. He was up there, and he was friends with Peggy Shippen's dad. Okay, and he was over there all the parties. Got to know Peggy, and there's good source on the fact that they were probably a little more than friends. Okay, and of course he was just this French, you know, gallivant, you know, and he took off and went about his business. This is Benedict Arnold when he was just getting started. But where is the one? That's him older. I know I have one of Andre somewhere here. Maybe I don't. But anyway, and that's West Point, what it looked like around that time. A major stronghold, because if they took over West Point, they cut off the whole New England side, and you cut off all of that industry and everything else from the rest of the colonies, and that's it. You're sunk. And that's what he was going to turn over. And there's your Nathaniel Green. Okay, so we're almost finished here. Nathaniel Green's a great pick, because again, all of these guys gave up so much. Washington did too. He held on. Of course, they had a little bit more money going in. He really wasn't about money. He gave up quite a lot. Didn't take a salary. He never got paid, to my knowledge. Correct me if I'm wrong, historians. But again, first president, you know, didn't take anything as far as I know, because that was a big argument there he had with Benedict Arnold. It's like he's saying, I've lost everything. I have no money. I was a merchant. I had this, I had that. I got to feed my kids, you know. And he's like, we're all in the same boat, Benedict, you know. And Washington kept putting in for him, good word in and everything else, and it just wasn't getting anywhere. He couldn't get anything done from Continental Congress, Lynn. You know, it was just an awful situation. How he made it 8 years, I have no clue. It's absolutely mind-boggling. You know, what do you guys think, chat?
It was a meant to be thing.
Yeah, absolutely mind-boggling. I think I have to pull it back up this way. Okay, here we go. Yeah, you know, again, divine intervention. Now, again, the story is when Benedict Arnold is going to turn over West Point, he is turning it over to Major Andre. Benedict Arnold is now married to Peggy Shippen. And when Peggy Shippen died later on, she still had the locket around her neck. I believe it was around her neck, at least within her person, of Major Andre's hair. You know what I mean? So you've got to think that for the 2 years after he married Peggy, he's not getting paid. He's not getting promoted. He thinks that we're losing the war, and he's going to make it easier and stop it. This was, if you read his letters and everything else, again, not an excuse, but he really felt like he was just going to stop. Very much like the guy who invented the Gatling gun. They'll see it and they'll stop. And they underestimated the intestinal fortitude of the American soldier, plain and simple, because they kept going, and it was just devastating. And he was trying to stop it, and also they offered him, I think they offered him 20,000 pounds and brigadier general or whatever. It's definitely a good promotion. And you know, Andre and Peggy are trying to talk him into it. So they broke him down over 2 years. He's going to, you know, and again, no excuse, but I feel like that's what happened. And then he just said, screw it. Let's just do the deal. So he sets it up with Andre. Andre goes to see him. Washington is coming to West Point, right? So all of this is starting to shift. Benedict is signing the papers that he gives Andre. Andre's going back. He's on this ship called the Valkyrie or the Vulture. I think it was Vulture. And he goes to carry out this deal for West Point, and he's got stuff that Benedict Arnold signed on him. He's got it in his boot. He gets stopped by these two picket guys, like basically ruffians, and they want to rob him. They make him strip down. They go through his stuff, and somebody finds the note, turns it in. So he turns it in. Benedict Arnold finds out that, oh my God, they've got the note. He jumps on Andre's boat, steals his boat, doesn't give two craps about Andre, okay, or his wife. He goes in and he sees Peggy before he leaves. He says, I gotta go. And she got a brand new baby. So what does Peggy do? She knows all the guys are going to show up. She acts batshit crazy. I mean, she's throwing shit around the room. She's, flipping furniture stuff, screaming, don't touch my baby, and all this other mess, because she doesn't want to be hung for treason. So she's putting on a good show. And Benedict Arnold gets on Andre's boat and hightails it out of there, and tells the guys who buy them all rum or whiskey or one of the two things, if they paddle double quick, and get him to the big ship and get him the heck out of there so he can go become British, soldier, and get all his money and his, his promotion and all that stuff. And then what happens when they get to the ship and the guys finally get him there? He arrests him and keeps him prisoner. This guy just snapped cold crazy. Peggy gets away with it. She goes back to Washington, lets her go, says, if you catch Arnold, I want him alive. And he gives Peggy a choice. Once he realizes that Benedict Arnold is gone, this is later on, and he's gone off to England, he gives Peggy a choice. You can go back to see your dad, or you can go to be with him. And she chose her dad, back to Philadelphia. So when she died, she still had Andre's lock of hair around her neck. Now, you can't tell me that those two people for 2 years didn't work on that man. Again, no excuse, but you see what breaks people. Right, Lynn?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true.
I had to tell you all that because, hey, you might be able to use some of that information in your life, or maybe just tell me what you think. Because, again, when you really look into the lives of these people, it's a little bit deeper than just, he was a traitor, he's a Benedict Arnold, And, again, that doesn't change. That doesn't change at all. But it does make you look a little deeper into it.
Rochambeau and the French army have been in America for over a year. Still waiting
More
for
hot water,
reinforcements,
baby. I'll
they
be right back.
drill on Rhode Island, far from the action. Outside of New York, Washington is beside himself with frustration. For 5 years, he has been longing to retake the city, occupied by the main British army. He had pinned his hopes on the French, but they have done nothing. Lafayette, now back in America, urges General Rochambeau to take action.
Monsieur le Comte, here I find myself in the middle of a foreign land with the French army sitting idle in Rhode Island. The talk among the Tories and the English is that France has come to stir up fire but not fight themselves. How am I to answer them when you are guarding an island that nobody in America cares about? Whatever troops you are expecting next year from France, whatever plans you have for the future, will not make up for the fatal harm of your inaction now. We must do battle. And my vanity makes me believe that we French can never be beaten.
Rochambeau is being asked to attack an island, New York City, surrounded by waters controlled by the British Navy. He finds Lafayette's proposal less than appealing.
My dear fellow, I'll let you in on one of my great secrets, learned from years of experience. Frenchmen aren't invincible. Our troops are easily beaten when they lose confidence in their leaders. and they do it very quickly. When they see that their lives are being risked to satisfy some general's personal ambition. Perhaps the warmth of your spirit has, for the moment, gotten the better part of your sound judgment. Keep this fire for when we actually go into battle.
Washington does not take this dose of French realism calmly. An aide walks in soon after he gets the news.
The general is pacing to and fro in such a state of uncontrolled agitation that he doesn't even notice us come in. He seems crushed with resentment and indignation and despair. All my hopes blasted, he exclaims. The cause is lost and my country is ruined. Then he sees us and tries to compose himself, apologizing. I had been hoping for so many months to take New York, and now all my plans are thwarted. I can see that inside he is still churning like a suppressed volcano. And finally, he bursts out in anguish. The French, I wish to God they wouldn't keep raising our hopes and then letting us down.
Then, on August 14th, events take a sudden and surprising turn. Rochambeau receives a bulletin from the French Admiral Count de Grasse in the Caribbean. He immediately passes the news to Washington.
Count de Grasse will be arriving in the Chesapeake area with 29 warboats, 3,000 troops, several dozen field guns, and 1,200,000 pounds in cash. Because of obligations in the islands, this force will be available to us only until October 15th. We must make use of it promptly and efficiently.
De Grasse's ships and troops will be coming to Virginia, close to where Cornwallis is camped. Because hurricane season is approaching, they will be available for 2 weeks only. Washington leaps into action. Coordinating with Rochambeau, he makes plans to rush their best troops south to Virginia to meet up with de Grasse's fleet.
The French and the Americans are planning an operation in order to destroy the British position in Yorktown. Now, they know that the only way to do that successfully is a combined operation. And a combined operation is incredibly difficult. It means you've got to have the troops and the ships and also the seaborne artillery, which is another crucial element of it because the artillery is too heavy to move overland. And they've all got to arrive in the same area to provide a local superiority on force, both on land and at sea, at the same moment.
Washington and Rochambeau begin a month-long march south. In an age before modern communications, when sailing ships depend on the vagaries of wind and weather, it will take a miracle for both ships and armies to arrive at the scheduled time. Lafayette is camped in Williamsburg, near Yorktown. He sends Washington detailed reports.
Lord Cornwallis is entrenching at Yorktown. He is picking up whatever provisions he can get from the surrounding countryside. He has a large quantity of Negroes in town with him. They are working day and night on the fortifications. The moment I can get the plans, I will send them to you. He will soon be in a very strong position. Lord Cornwallis will have to be attacked with a very large apparatus. We have no news yet in this camp of the arrival of a certain gentleman, but I will take measures that you hear from me the moment he is seen.
The certain gentleman, the French Admiral Count de Grasse, arrives on schedule at the Virginia Capes. He is met by a fleet of British ships coming to Cornwallis's aid. They engage in a fierce 2-hour battle. Outnumbered, the British fleet retreats to New York for reinforcements. When Washington and Rochambeau arrive outside of Yorktown, the French Navy controls the Chesapeake. Rochambeau sends his greetings to de Grasse.
I must confess, you are, mon cher amiral, the most wonderful admiral that I know. You have surpassed everything we could want. Now we are preparing for our own equally good piece of work. Tomorrow we will move as close as possible to Yorktown. And then our troops will just wait for the pear to ripen. We will, of course, yield precedence to the Americans. We will allow them to claim the victory.
Cornwallis's troops are camped on the river's edge. Facing them, are the Allied French and American armies. To their rear, de Grasse's fleet.
They have blockaded Chesapeake Bay. Cornwallis can get no reinforcements. You really can't move around because you can send ships up virtually any river in Virginia and cut him off. So he's penned in there, he can't get out. And the Allies have Chesapeake Bay as a giant super highway to bring men and guns and food and all the other things necessary to fight a battle.
This is the moment that Washington has been waiting for.
Here it is.
The Allies command 17,000 troops. The British, only 9,000.
Oh, yeah.
Washington's troops are ready for action. In the 5 years of the war, they have become the disciplined army he has always wanted.
Finally, he's
Among
got
the
it.
soldiers is a young man who had fought in the first major battle of the Revolution as a raw recruit. Joseph Plum Martin is now a seasoned veteran of numerous campaigns.
I love this part.
They told us that we're about to pay a visit to our old friends, the British. Their accommodations are cramped, and I fear that they're not ready to receive so many visitors, but we've come such a long way to see them. We're just not going to be put off by their excuses.
Cornwallis sends a dispatch
He
to
certainly
Clinton,
has come around.
suggesting that he hurry up the reinforcements. Clinton replies that rescue is on the way.
5,000 soldiers are on the King's ships. Joint operations will commence in a few days to relieve you.
While they wait, Cornwallis's men furiously dig trenches in preparation for the Allied assault. His black auxiliaries do much of the heavy labor.
Working hard in the heat. The works will soon be in a tolerable state of defense. The army is in good health. We have 6 weeks' provisions.
The French and Americans prepare for a siege. They dig trenches encircling the town. Rochambeau, an expert at siege warfare, guides the activities. The British soldiers watch with increasing alarm.
I try to warn the Earl of the weakness of our defenses. I show him how I can just jump over the earthworks. It will disgrace our army to fall in a siege. If that happens, he answers coldly. The blame will be on Clinton, not on us.
The bombardment of Yorktown now begins in earnest. The French cannon pound the British defenses day and night. When the British are weak enough, the Allies advance their lines, bringing the cannon ever closer.
It's almost an exercise in mathematics in which you aim to break up the enemy's attack and you want to get it so you can shoot at him from as many sides as possible. So it's a very structured and formal activity, much like the way that a boa constrictor deals with its victims. They grasp them, weaken them, let up a little, and then grasp them tighter until eventually they have their dinner. And a siege is like that. Once one is properly undertaken, unless there is some outside intervention, the people besieging the town are going to win.
The siege began. It lasted week after week. And as it lasted, Cornwallis's provisions began to go very short. In order to prevent his horses from starving to death, they had to be slaughtered and thrown into the river.
And he did with the African Americans something very similar to what he did with the horses. His men were starving, and they wanted every ounce of food for his men, and so they simply drove them out of the camp.
The black auxiliaries are forced into the no man's land between the fighting armies.
It's harsh. Our black friends have served our army well, and now we drive them out by force between firing guns. Now they will have to face the reward of their cruel masters. No, I can't talk about what we are doing to them.
Night, Ted. Love you, baby.
The Americans and French positioned themselves to advance on the British outer defenses.
The password for tonight is the name of the French commander, Rochambeau. Easy to remember, Rochambeau. It sounds just like rush on, boys. The signal is given. We silently move on the redoubts, bayonets fixed. The enemy sees us and begins firing. I hear people crying, "The redoubts are ours!" There's no stopping us. In we go. It really is. Rush on, boys.
By now, the Americans and French are just outside the final barricades. Yorktown is ready to be taken. On the 17th of October, 1781, the British send up a flag of truce.
Needless to say, the victorious colonials are in a mood to celebrate and to rub in their victory.
There you go.
Washington, the consummate actor, dramatically appears on a charger, riding up and down the American lines, forbidding them to engage in any demonstration, and shouting, "Posterity will huzzah for us."
There you go. Isn't that something?
The play is over. The fifth act has ended. I must confess I was a bit uneasy during the first 4 acts, but my heart keenly enjoyed this last one.
Lafayette, wonderful contributor to the cause. Absolutely.
It is a warm October day. The leaves are already turning. The British surrender with their band playing. Their choice of music is unknown, but legend has it that the band played an old English ballad, "The World Turned Upside Down." If ponies rode men and grass ate cows, if summer were spring and the other way round, then all the world would be upside down.
We know the feeling, don't we, folks?
They march out in formation, all armed, with bayonets fixed, drums beating, and faces lengthening. They don't pay much attention to us Americans, but when they see the French, their faces darken. They look like boys who've been whipped at school.
On October 24th, a huge British fleet arrives off the Chesapeake Capes. Clinton has made good on his promise, but it is 1 week too late.
Thank goodness.
The French fleet has returned to the Caribbean. Cornwallis and his entire army are prisoners of the Americans. Yorktown is the biggest British disaster since Saratoga.
That's all we
The
needed.
news reaches British essayist Horace Walpole.
Ah, yes, Cornwallis.
Don't you love him?
Columbus, who was to bestow America on us again. For us to lose a second army, this is an achievement.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here ends another volume in the American War. I would suggest that it's all over, but for the fact that there are 3 other wars that have grown out of it. And we're £40 million in debt.
Yeah, it's true. True story. This is wild.
It
So
is not
sad.
immediately obvious that the war is over. The English still hold New York, Charleston, and Savannah. With the French Navy out of the way, the British again rule the sea. But the British have bet everything on victory in the South. They must now accept that this is a war they can never really win. In Tom Paine's words, they cannot conquer an idea with an army.
There you go.
British popular opinion, which had been so strongly in favor of the war at the beginning, had turned heavily, and as it turned out, irrevocably against the government. It's the same thing with other wars, of course. Long wars bring higher taxes, bring economic crisis, bring an interruption of trade, decline of property prices, and so on. All these things, and especially the fact that the war had become a world war against France, all of them created a crisis which public opinion would no longer tolerate.
Yorktown brings down the government. The opposition takes over, committed to ending the war. In 1783, 2 years after the defeat at Yorktown, a treaty is signed in Paris.
2 years.
The British signatories declined to pose for the official portrait. King George tries to console himself.
America seems to be a land of knaves. In the end, perhaps it is for the best that its inhabitants have become aliens to this kingdom.
But it is observed that when he announces the terms of the American treaty to Parliament, his voice chokes when he says the word independence.
The old man, our captain, came in and handed
This
us
is
our
sad.
discharge papers. We didn't say much. And we've lived together for 8 years. Young men with warm hearts, through hardships, dangers, a family of brothers, and now never to see each other again.
Every war.
It's a sad time.
Nothing like it.
And by now everyone's heard the old story of the soldiers tracking the blood of their feet on the frozen ground. It literally happened.
Mm.
But you don't know 1,000th part of how we suffered. You never can.
Amen, brother. Amen. There you go.
As liberty continues, peace, and a new scene opens. The war is over.
The guy
but the battle
from
to govern has just begun.
They'll get all the power and all
Storm of the
money into their own
Century.
hands, and they'll swallow up all us little folks.
The blueprint for America is marked by controversy.
It's only just begun.
With a 6-year term.
As a new kind of nation is defined.
We're the first nation in modern times to make ideology the basis of our existence.
There you go. You got yourself a country, fellas. What you gonna do with it? Lynn, I'm telling you what, wasn't it something?
Yes,
You know?
absolutely. I'm so happy to be here and get to be a part of this too. This has been great.
It has been. It has been. Now, I'll tell you what. I know it's late, but I've got this little ghost story. If you want to see it, anybody here want to hear a little ghost story? If you can't stay, I understand. Lynn, I'd love for you to see it. You got 9 minutes?
Yes, I do.
Okay. If you have to, go in between, just listen or whatever, but you have to see this picture. You have to hear this story about this one ghost. It's absolutely amazing. And what it is, it's Fort Mifflin. This is a little fort that could. And it was a pivotal part of the Revolutionary, not only the Revolutionary War, but many times through history, up and down, so many different things, just like a lot of historical places. But I'll let these guys tell it and we'll get on out of here. But it's been fabulous. I just love this episode. So here we go. Let me see if I got it. It's the last thing on the board, folks. It's been fun, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
All right, here we go. Do-do-do-do-do. Haunted history.
This is Fort Mifflin. Some call it the Alamo on the Delaware because it never lost a battle.
They left the flag flying before they evacuated. The fort was defeated. It was completely destroyed, but it never surrendered.
This is one of the most amazing
Never
sites
surrender.
in Philadelphia.
Fight,
in Philadelphia's history, as far as I'm concerned, and certainly in the paranormal history of Philadelphia.
We're on every list of the most haunted sites in the country.
It's unique. Layers of history here. Layers of death. Layers of spirits.
A couple stories I have personally in this place. I brought several bus tours down here over the years. One woman came up to me and said, "Boy, those reenactors you had really scared me." So I said, "Ma'am, we didn't have any reenactors here."
There's a Revolutionary War tour guide soldier. There's no tour guide on duty, and people will come out and rave about this tour guide that went into explicit details about the bombardment.
Those sorts of things happen here. The stories are legion here in this fort, this magical place, this historical place, and this most haunted fort, Fort Mifflin. I'm Charles J. Adams III, and I'm going to be your host for this segment of Stories on Ghosts and Hauntings in the City of Philadelphia.
New CoverGirl Eye Enhancer 3D Mascara. Up and out volume effect. Curl, lift, fan.
Mifflin is always ranked in the top 10 most haunted sites in the United States.
Fort Mifflin actually predates the founding of the United States of America. It was commissioned by the British in 1771 to protect their wealthy colonial city of Philadelphia, just a few miles up the river. They gave John Montresor, the chief engineer in America, a limited budget and told him to build a fort on Mud Island. So it was a daunting challenge, and he runs out of money and leaves the fort unfinished. That western wall was completely unfinished. If you fast forward a few years to 1775, Benjamin Franklin convenes the Committee of Safety in Philadelphia, and they recognize the strategic location of Fort Mifflin on Mud Island. Americans could defend access to the city. By 1777, George Washington is defeated at Brandywine. He loses at Paoli. The British occupy the city of Philadelphia. The British continue to win at Germantown, and Washington knows he needs to achieve winter quarters at Valley Forge. So he tells the garrison here to hold to the last extremity. The 5-week siege here culminated in a 6-day bombardment, which was the greatest of the American Revolution. Ultimately, a British victory, but it took them so long to achieve it that Washington was able to make it to Valley Forge without being pursued by General William Howe. And this is that pivotal winter in Valley Forge where von Steuben comes and trains the troops, and the French join the cause in February with a checkbook and a navy. So what emerges from Valley Forge in the spring of 1778 is a very different army from what arrived there in fall of 1777.
Fire in the hole!
Up to 1,000 cannonballs an hour at the peak of the siege. In between Fort Mifflin and Fort Mercer were a series of underwater obstacles called chevaux de frise. These also helped to prevent British passage. They are basically like a 20 or 30-foot timber topped with an iron spike, sunk in a box of rocks. They're all pointed downstream, intending to impale an advancing vessel. After this incredible, valiant, persevering defense, ultimately, the garrison could no longer defend the fort, and then they evacuated. But they leave a detail of 40 young soldiers behind who spiked the last 10 working cannon, set fire to the remains of the fort, but they left the flag flying. The fort was defeated, it was completely destroyed, but it never surrendered. And that spirit of perseverance and ingenuity has gone on to be demonstrated over and over again over the fort's history, both as an active military installation and as a historic site in the community of Philadelphia. The fort was reconstructed in the late 18th century. It was garrisoned for the War of 1812, meaning it was staffed up to defend the city. It was a federal prison during the Civil War, a naval munitions depot in the early 20th century. There was a Marine Corps barracks. We even had anti-aircraft batteries here in the early years of World War II, just decommissioned in 1954. So Fort Mifflin answered yes every time the United States asked her to serve. Really, the fort is a brick and mortar veteran of 3 centuries of service to our country.
So you had Civil War death. You had the Revolutionary War deaths. When the fort was being rebuilt under Adams, it was during the yellow fever epidemic of Philadelphia. So you had the yellow fever deaths. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deaths that would have happened here. It's unique. Layers of history here. Layers of death. layers of spirits. Now, every square inch of this place is active. I always tell people it never disappoints. If you come here, something's going to happen.
Well, we are in a casemate. If you wondered what they look like, this is it. And if you wonder why we're here, it's because it's one of the haunted spots, or typical of the haunted spots here at Fort Mifflin.
These casemates were initially built as bomb shelters under John Adams. And then during the Civil War, these casemates became prison cells. It became a military prison. And in this held Confederate prisoners, Union prisoners, and political prisoners. This particular casemate, casemate 1, is active, where anywhere in these casemates you hear footsteps coming up and down the hallways. You can hear moans. There's figures that dart around. Michael is a smaller shadow figure, and we had a medium and we got some EVPs where he identifies himself as Michael. His responsibility was either the waste buckets or getting the food to the prisoners.
I guess this was a very vital part of life here in the casemates.
It was. You would have had your prisoners in here, estimated up to 50. So this would be their source of heat. We have a spirit that's been seen numerous times here, that when there's a fire, just kneeling, trying to keep warm here by the fireplace. As we come down, we're going to pass smaller casemates. These were used as storage when it was rebuilt under Adams, but these became civilian prison cells. This is casemate 5. During the Civil War, this is where the Union prisoners were kept. It would have been your deserters, murder.
Can you imagine?
Military crime. You can be in here and you hear footsteps coming down towards you, guards walking back and forth.
Being locked up in there?
Because the conditions were horrific. These people were basically sleeping in their own human waste. It's also in here. We have a spirit that's partial to blonde females. He likes to stroke their hair, touch them. There's a screaming lady that we hear. It's a blood curdling scream. We don't know exactly who it is. All right, so we're coming into the powder magazine here. This would have been where the gunpowder was stored. And this was designed in case there was an explosion. It didn't blow straight back out. Shadow figures run down this back wall here. And this is no lights in here. It's pitch black. There's no external lights. You can't even see the hand in front of your face. The quartermaster store is part of it with the bathroom. There's been sightings in there. There's a woman that gets sighted in the woman's room. Is when I know that somebody has seen the woman in there because they come running out screaming. You can be in the men's room and you hear somebody
Love
in
that.
the stalls. And you find out there is no one in the stalls. It's empty. There's a Revolutionary War tour guide soldier that usually is around the powder magazine. There's no tour guide on duty, and people will come out and rave about this tour guide that went into explicit details about the bombardment, and there's nobody here that was giving tours. We have at the blacksmith shop, we have Jacob as the blacksmith. He was identified himself as Jacob. The commander, the commandant of the fort, I guess would want him to close all the doors and windows. Jacob would sneak up in the back door and get caught and reprimanded. We had a groundskeeper here. Everything would be closed up at night because we have a lot of wildlife here. Door would be open in the morning, get closed again at night, be open. Eventually, it was ripped off the side of the blacksmith shop. It was re-put up. It got ripped off again. Eventually, it was put up, nailed shut, and ripped forcefully off the side of the blacksmith building and thrown up on the hill. And we would tell everybody, respect the dead here. It's one of the most hallowed grounds in the country. These guys, fought, held off the British long enough to, change the course of history.
We are not a haunted attraction. We are actually haunted. We invite people to experience it for themselves. We turn out the lights and tell true stories. We don't hire actors. We don't hang up decorations. So it is, by its nature, the energy is different on every visit. We always try to trace the paranormal experience back to our documented history. So we only tell things that we believe to be true, and we determine what we believe to be true by having multiple people have the same or similar experience in the same location of the fort. And then we pass that all through the lens of our documented history and ask, does it make sense? We've been through many battles, but here we still are. It's 100% original historic fabric, home of some of the most immersive and interesting and far-reaching living history programming presented in the city. And we're on every list of the most haunted sites in the country.
It's great place for history. We have a lot of nature here. It's something for everybody if you want to come out to the fort. It doesn't have to be paranormal, but if you come out, if you're not here for the paranormal, be aware of something might happen.
My internet, my rules. Introducing My Home.
Off. That was an absolute trip. I don't know if you guys saw that picture. Did you see the picture, Lynn?
Yeah, what was the name of it again? Fort what?
Fort Mifflin. And I sent you a little video. I'm trying to see if it went through. If it went through, I might be able to share it, but I don't know.
And what city is that in?
You
Philadelphia?
know, I think so. I think it's right on the... Can anybody in chat answer that question? I'm not sure. Gosh, did it work? Let's see if it worked. I don't know if it did. I can hear it, but I can't see it. Wait a minute. You know what I can do, though? Screw that, and let me see if I can find it. Okay, hold on one second. This is a fantastic YouTube channel. You guys might recognize the young lady from it. Is this it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Here it is. Travel the Dead, Haunted Fort Mifflin. This is part 2. There's the first one. Hold on 1 second, guys. This is totally worth it. I'm trying to find you that picture. Part 1.
I wonder how far Philadelphia is from Gettysburg.
I don't know that either. I would say it is probably less than an hour, I would say. I think this is it here. This is bonus footage. Well, anyway, it was a lovely picture of that ghost from Fort Mifflin. Now, this is the ghost that actually is so, I don't know what you call it, I don't want to say solid, but he's just so there. He's actually like a tour guide. He takes people on a tour. They come out of this, what do we call it? A case, oh gosh, casemate that holds the powder, like a powder room, that holds all the armory and stuff. And he's so solid that he can actually take these people, through and answer questions and things. And there's a 4th grader that got a picture, and it's so solid of this ghost. And I'm trying to find it so bad for you, but it doesn't look like the video I sent you. Can you see the video I sent you in your phone, or you're on your phone right now?
Yeah,
you can't do it.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'll tell you what, guys. I'll see if I can get it and have it for you the next time for the last show. But it is absolutely amazing. So go watch that video. It's Fort Mifflin, haunted, Fort Mifflin, and you'll see it again. And I'll try to get the other one for you, at least a picture on my phone, but it didn't work. I tried for you. So thank you, Lynn, for coming back.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
We missed you terrible. I'm glad you had a good time. I'm glad you're back safe. Everybody here, I'm glad you're enjoying this. And we got one more, folks, and then we're on to Sons of Liberty. So episode 6 next Sunday. Lynn, are you with us?
I'm with you. Yes.
Okay, let's watch it and we'll learn something about these people. Maybe we can learn something about ourselves. I love you all. Get out of here. We had a nice night. It's been a blast, Lynn. Thanks for being here. Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much for having me. Good night, everybody.
Be good humans.
Be the change you want to see.
There it is. Absolutely. Good night. right, everybody. Dance that blues away. Why not? At this point,